Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Transportation Finance and Policy Division for this Thursday, March 14th. I'm Frank Hornstein, the chair. Welcome. We just have a few bills to get through before deadline. We'll do our best to do it in our time allotted, but if not, we'll be reconvening in this room 15 minutes after session. So we will be kind of moving things around in terms of the agenda to accommodate various members' needs. We have lots of committees meeting simultaneously and votes happening. So if you see someone coming up who doesn't look like Representative Hornstein, the first bill on the agenda, it's for that reason we're accommodating Representative Stephenson. So welcome to the committee, and of course we don't have a quorum, but once we do, we will move your bill to Ways and Means. So please state your name for the record and talk to us a little about House File 1755.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Zach Stephenson, and I'm here today to talk to you about 1755, which is a very simple and straightforward bill that's designed to help us tackle the ongoing climate crisis that we are facing in the world today. As I think members of the committee are probably aware, the transportation sector is now the largest emitter of carbon in the state of Minnesota. And so what this bill does is it allows us to try as a government to reduce the amount of carbon that we are emitting through the utilization of our bus fleet in the operated by Met Council and specifically Metro Transit. The bill has an appropriation in it, but the appropriation is from the Renewable Development account, and so that will be handled in a different finance committee. But the policy basis here is that it restricts Met Transit's ability to buy diesel buses until the appropriation in Section 2 is used up to spend on the differential between the cost of a diesel bus and the cost of an electric bus. I do want to note that I had some feedback actually earlier today from Metro Council. They want a slight tweak in the language that we weren't able to accommodate in advance of this hearing, but I do intend to fix just basically substituting Metro Transit for Metropolitan Council in the language here so that we're clear that we're talking about the buses and the Metro Transit fleet and not some of the other vehicles that the Metropolitan Council owns and operates. So that's the basic gist of the bill. I have one testifier, I believe, who would like to speak to the bill if the chair.
Thank you, Representative Stephenson. So just to your last point, did you, at the appropriate time, perhaps after we've heard testimony, did you want to make an oral amendment to that change?
You know, if the chair is inclined to accept an oral amendment, that's fine. Otherwise, this does have another committee stop, and we could fix it at the next committee. But
okay.
I defer to you.
I mean, if it relates to transportation, it would be appropriate to do it here. But we can revisit that after your testifier. And members, just a quick announcement. I know we had a few folks come late. We are going to be sort of moving things around in the agenda to accommodate members' other committees, and so that's why we're having Representative Stephenson do his bill a little bit out of order, and our motion was to move this to Ways and Means. And one other announcement, Ms. Stephen wants to remind everybody to keep, if we have to come back this evening, keep the bills that we haven't heard yet in your folder so that they don't get lost. So anyway, we do now have a quorum, and we'll wait see if when Representative Petersburg comes we can do the minutes, but at least we can move this bill out of committee now if we have the opportunity. So welcome to the committee. You've had a very busy day. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Brendan Jordan with the Great Plains Institute. I represent Drive Electric Minnesota. You have a busy agenda today. I will be brief. Drive Electric Minnesota is supportive of electric transportation and its benefits and making sure that they're available to all Minnesotans, whether they drive personal vehicles or whether they bike on an e-bike or whether they take public transportation. I think we are supportive of this bill. I think that offering electric bus transportation will be a very high quality of transportation silent operation, zero emissions, and really will really be a premium option for users of public transportation. So Drive Electric Minnesota is supportive of this bill, and a lot of our members are involved in various ways in working with Metro Transit to deploy this system and the charging and all the aspects of making this a success for the state.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Appreciate the, a couple of questions. Great. Let's do Representative Torkelson, then Representative Runbeck.
Well, thank you. An interesting proposal. First, why do you feel the Renewable Development Fund is the appropriate resource for this?
Representative Stephenson.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if, again, I think that the answer to that question is that the Renewable Development Fund is developed in order to support the advancement of renewable energy, and there's a close compatibility with electric vehicles, particularly electric buses. It allows us to better take advantage of peak load times on, for example, solar equipment, because these vehicles typically charge sort of off-peak hours. So it's a load balancing issue that is really helpful, and that's a good reason to use the RDA for this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, but solar energy and off-peak hours don't match up very well in what I know about it.
I shouldn't have said solar, I should have said wind, but I misspoke. But I think the general drift is that it is a load management issue it helps with.
Mr. Chair, Representative, we've been looking at this electric bus issue in some detail over the last few weeks. And the story we've gotten up to this point is that these electric buses will virtually pay for themselves because they are so much cheaper to operate and maintain, even though they're more costly at the get-go, that over time, the payback is significant. So are you going to refund the Renewable Development Fund as these electric buses pay for themselves?
Representative Stephenson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, there's no refund in the bill.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your answer.
There's no refund in the bill, no.
So
Representative Torkelson.
is the argument then that these electric buses are much more expensive than you thought they were to operate and own?
Representative Stephenson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, that's not my argument. I think, as you noted, there's a larger upfront cost for the bill. There are savings over time.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would argue that this is really not an appropriate use of the Renewable Development Fund. It's really not what it was meant for. If electric buses are the way to go, there's should be other ways to fund them rather than use this important fund for that particular purpose, in my opinion, Mr. Chair. I'm sure others have questions.
Thank you. Representative Runbeck was next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Renewable Development Fund, I believe, is Xcel Energy's fund, and they have an advisory board that would weigh in and certainly be making, stating approval of how the money's being spent. And has that advisory board weighed in on this?
Representative Stephenson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Runbeck, I am not aware of if the advisory board has weighed in on that question. I don't know how much discussion the chair wants to have about the financing mechanism of this as opposed to the policy mechanism.
I would give the committee some latitude, but Section 1 is the most direct transportation related, but I think we can entertain some conversation about the RDF, but Section 1 is really this transportation piece.
Well,
Representative
Mr. Chair,
Runbeck.
I mean, perhaps someone from Xcel would be here and could comment. It just seems like a bit of a takings, and I don't think we do that around here, so would appreciate any comments.
Representative Elkins, hold on just one sec. Is there anyone from Xcel or even the utility industry in general, electric utilities, munis, co-ops, investor-owned utilities? Okay, I'm sorry, Representative Runbeck, they have been coming to the Energy Committee, but not here apparently, so. Representative Runbeck, did you want to have a follow-up question?
I don't. I mean, I didn't think we were satisfied that we had enough out of electric buses at this point. Even the range is only 100 miles. And apparently, that is even reduced if they're going to be using heaters and if they have to use air conditioning. the range is reduced substantially from that. So, it seems odd that we would be moving ahead without having them meet, the goals really of what we need for transportation.
Thank you, Representative Runbeck. Representative Elkins, I saw your hand up.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Mr.
speak in the
Chair.
mic.
Yep, been learning that. What I can say about this that I know is that that Metro Transit and Xcel Energy has talked about this extensively, and that Xcel Energy does support this because the bulk of the usage for the charging would be overnight using their off-peak base loads. And would be at reduced rates. And I don't know where the 100-mile range came from. I don't know that we know what it will be for the first round of buses yet. That's why the reason why Metro Transit is only buying 6 of them is to find out what the performance characteristics are, especially related to range and battery performance. But I am quite confident in stating that the Metro Transit and Xcel Energy have discussed this extensively, and that Xcel does support this program.
Thank you, and I would echo that. I sit on the Energy and Climate Committee or Division, and we've had a lot of conversation about electric vehicles, electric infrastructure for transportation there, and I think all the utilities, investor-owned or otherwise, have spoken at various times on the record in general support of electrification. So, in terms of a position, I think we can confidently say that, they would be at least, if not supportive of this bill, supportive of the concept. So, is there any, and again, for those who came late, we are taking things in order of the availability of authors today. Representative Torkelson?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know
Representative Petersburg?
the support for the concept. I assume you're speaking of the concept of electric buses. The concept we're talking about here is the concept of whether or not it's appropriate to use the
Correct.
Renewable Development Fund
Yes.
for the resource for this. What percentage of Xcel's service area will be served by these electric buses?
Representative Stephenson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, I believe there is I couldn't give you a specific number, but there's very broad overlap between the service areas of Metro Transit and the service areas of Xcel Energy.
Well,
And-
thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chair.
Torkelson.
Thank you, Representative. So these electric buses are going to be used throughout the Metro buses, Met Council's bus service area?
Representative Stephenson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, I don't think there's anything in the bill that specifies exactly where the buses will be used, but they will be used in Metro Transit's territory presumably.
Well, thank you,
Representative
Mr. Chair.
Torkelson.
Thank you, Representative. We've heard testimony and proposals at other times that these buses would be used in a very specific and rather restricted area. And apparently that's not what you're hearing. So I don't see any information here that actually supports the use of the RDF. Do you have letters or testimony regarding the use of the RDF for this purpose?
Representative Stephenson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, again, that is a question that we'll be discussing in detail in front of the Energy Committee, which has jurisdiction over the RDA.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. I'd request a roll call on the bill.
Okay. We still have some additional discussion. Representative Petersburg, Runbeck, and I think Elkins. And Kosnick, I'm sorry, Kosnick after Petersburg, then Runbeck. Okay, good.
This is just a clarifying question. I just want to make sure I understand the language on 1.17 through 1.20, where it says any funds remaining from this appropriation that are insufficient to fully fund the incremental cost of purchasing the electric bus will revert back. Is that saying that if you can't fund a full bus but can only fund half a bus, that half a bus difference is going back to the account? Or what does that mean? And I don't know if somebody else can explain that, Mr. Chair.
Representative Stevenson, do you feel comfortable explaining that, or do you have others that might be
No,
available?
Mr. Chair, I would agree with that interpretation, that if there's incremental costs left over, that they revert back to the RDA at the end.
Okay, and
Of the
Mr.
program.
Chair, one follow-up.
Sure, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you,
of course.
Mr. Chair. Do you know where this bill is in the Senate and what it's doing over there?
Representative Stevenson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Petersburg I understand the bill. I have spoken to a senator about carrying the bill in the Senate, and I believe he has introduced it. I would have to double check, but I believe that is accurate.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Petersburg. Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an interesting topic, and obviously we got a few questions to iron out here. We had met at the Minneapolis North High School and talked about the other electric bus bills, and I think Representative Elkins, my memory was clear. We were trying to determine the life, how long a bus lives, basically a useful life of a bus, and I think it was about 12 years, 12 or 14 years, if I remember correctly. And the break-even point, I thought, was about 12 years, so I'm not sure if we can get some clarification, because then it doesn't seem like we're really getting much farther other than maybe reduce pollution. But we're not, we're spending twice as much money for these buses and not really getting any additional extra useful life out of the buses, if that was kind of my understanding. So if the author has any clarification on that, I'd be interested in hearing what the author's opinions are or the thoughts are on that.
Representative Stephenson.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would first say that I think that the pollution issue is really significant and is justifiable on its own. But I do think Mr. Jordan has some information about that, as well as about the range issues that were raised earlier.
And just as I recall, that was a very good recollection, and I think you were accurate. As I recall, there was some discussion also about reduced operations and maintenance costs. So that would have to be factored into the savings here. But proceed.
Mr. Chair, Representative Koznick, addressing the lifespan issue, what I've heard, I'm not a bus manufacturer, so it would be great for the committee to hear from one. But what they have told me is they expect most of the components of the bus to actually last much longer than the drivetrain of a diesel bus. It just has far fewer moving parts. The thing that will need to be replaced is the batteries. But at some point in the life of the bus, you'll have a battery replacement. And there's a lot of discussion about potential second life uses for those batteries. So they may have some value as a stationary storage application providing electric grid services. So the other question that came up earlier was on range, and there was a point made about limited range for buses. What I would say about that, Mr. Chair, is there are a wide variety of ranges available. I've seen buses with ranges up to 400 miles and more. It really depends on the size of the battery pack. And I know that there's a very careful planning discussion going on between Xcel Energy and Metro Transit to plan the charging of the buses and make sure that the battery pack is the appropriate size for the route where the bus will be used, just to make sure that the range is sufficient. But the range is a customizable feature with these buses. They can develop a bus with the right size battery pack for the range they need for its duty cycle.
And just briefly, Mr. Chair, I know that there's other members with more questions. So it seems like, we can argue about the use of where the money comes from, which from the side of the table, it sounds like a very good question to examine, rather the renewable development account. But overall, we're taking a look at increasing the cost of a single bus by double to nearly $1 million from our previous committee hearing. So I think that's an issue. To the author, is there funds available in here? I don't really see it, but I was just kind of briefing through it. But I don't seem to find money for additional charging stations and where that expense is going to come from.
Representative Stephenson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Koznick, no, there's no money for that in this bill. This bill funds the differential between the diesel bus and the electric bus.
Well, Mr. Chair, then I might suggest that the author amend and add even more money to show the true cost, that there's even more money that needs to be allocated to operate a bus so that it can actually go somewhere.
Representative Runbeck? I'm fine, thank you. Okay, Representative Elkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question was asked earlier about where will these buses be used. The original first 6 buses for the trial will be used on the C-Line arterial rapid transit busway from North Minneapolis into downtown. But I know that Metro Transit's plans are to, once we've taken the learnings from the initial trial to deploy these vehicles, widely throughout the region with the final, configuration of the buses that they actually purchase being based on what's learned during the initial trial, such that they do have sufficient range.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there any further discussion? We do have a roll call coming. Okay, well, do you have any final words for the committee, Representative Stephenson?
Mr. Chair, I know you have a very packed agenda today, so
Actually, sorry, we do, but we had some initial discussion of an oral amendment, and would you want to do that here or wait to the Energy Committee? It's really your call. I have
Mr.
no
Chair, if the committee is
recommendation.
inclined, the oral amendment, I think that that I was informed by Metro Transit and Metropolitan Council is to just change on line 1.7 Metropolitan Council to Metro Transit, just to clarify that it's
Okay.
the buses of Metro Transit, not vehicles.
Mr.
operating-
Burris, do you want to repeat that oral amendment?
Mr. Chair and members, I had conferred with Judge Shetland briefly
Yes.
after discussion of this. I do have a recommendation for a slightly different approach on the oral amendment.
Okay.
Certainly
You're okay
defer
with
to
that,
Mr. Burris,
Representative
yes.
Stevenson?
Yeah.
Okay. Always defer to Mr. Burris on
Yes,
these
Brian,
matters.
yeah.
Mr. Burris.
So for oral amendment, could be page 1, line 7, after council, insert for Metro Transit bus service. And that would, that approach would provide for some possible flexibility in where the procurement would actually take place, and specify that it would be for the Metro Transit bus system.
Hey, is everyone clear on this? Representative Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just as I'm reading the bill here, do we need to do anything with where it says Metropolitan Council on 1.16?
Mr. Chair, Representative Nelson, I don't think so, because the appropriation would still be to the council, and this,
It's just
the
double checking.
oral would specify what the purposes are of allowed use of the funds.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we are then ready to vote on the oral amendment on Lund 1.7, again, after Met Council for Metro Transit bus services.
Mr. Chair, did
Re-
anyone move the amendment?
Oh, sorry. I move the, I move this oral amendment, authors oral amendment. Sorry, thank you for that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. So the bill as amended is before us. And now, any concluding comments, Representative Stevenson?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said, I know you have a very packed agenda, so I'd say that this is an important step forward as we try to combat climate change and encourage electronic transportation. So I'd ask for the committee's support.
Thank you. So I will, I'm renewing my motion to send House File 1755 as amended to the Ways and Means Committee, and we have a roll call on the bill as amended. Ms. Stevens?
Hornstein,
Yes.
Tabke. Yes. Torkelson,
No.
Bernardi,
Yes.
Elkins,
Yes.
Hausman,
Yes.
Heinrich,
No.
Kegel, Kosnick,
No.
Mason,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
O'Driscoll, Petersburg,
No.
Richardson,
Yes.
Runbeck,
No.
West is absent, Wolgamott,
Yes.
Joachim,
Yes.
There being 11 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Thank you very much for your bill and for your testimony, and we appreciate your, I think believe your first appearance before the Transportation
I
Committee.
appeared-
No, you were here another time,
Yeah.
that's right,
But-
okay.
But
well,
thank you very much for your flexibility
yeah,
today. I appreciate
thank you.
it very much. Thank you.
All right, and again, on the topic of flexibility, we are going to now take Representative Ecklund's bills. Do you want to do House File 253 first? And I will move that House File 253 be referred to the General Register. And, Representative Ecklund, we had a conversation about range anxiety when we were dealing with electric vehicles, and I have to do the customary joke that that does not apply to encounters with Iron Range legislators, just to be clear. But welcome to the committee, and please brief us on House File 253.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, I kind of like the idea of electric vehicles, but we'll just leave it at that. All right, Mr. Chairman and members, a large wood products company has been considering expanding operations to include a production facility in northeastern Minnesota. The company has acquired property south of Cook, a former Ainsworth and Potlatch plant in Alongo. They currently own and operate a facility in Minnesota. That facility is in northern Minnesota also. Over the last few years, we have worked to encourage this company to expand in Minnesota. Although the project has not come to fruition, we have maintained regular communication so that we are ready to move forward with them should the time arise to do so. Current state law allows for permits to be granted to certain 3-unit trucks that meet the requirements prescribed in the state as long as they are operating between Grand Rapids and the Port of Duluth along the major highway systems numbered 2, 53, and 169. These trucks are important to industry in northern Minnesota. This bill, House File 253, proposes a minor change to the existing law by adding another contiguous piece of Highway 53 to the permitted area. This piece of Highway 53 runs by the property that could be used in the company's expansion. The small step of expanding the permitting authority to this stretch of highway will be helpful as we work to bring jobs to northeast Minnesota. And part of the reason for bringing this bill, Mr. Chairman and members, is we do have rail adjacent to this property, but sometimes getting the railroad to agree to stop is a different animal. And so we're asking for this exemption for this stretch of road for moving product on the highway. It'll benefit not only this potential expansion, but also the paper mill in International Falls. And currently, right now, the exemptions that were made on Highway 169, about 33% of Blandon's product is moved with these 3-unit vehicles on that stretch. So it's been very effective. And Blandon is in the same boat as some of these other ones with the captive rail service. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll ask or entertain any questions.
Is there discussion? I remember, I think I see Representative Solberg here, and I think we did something similar a number of years ago, and it worked out. So.
Mr. Chairman, that was for the Blandon part that I talked about on Highway 169, Highway 2.
Is there do you have an amendment to this bill at all, or just?
No,
Okay, all right. All right, is there a discussion, Representative Torkelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Ecklund, I'm not super familiar with these routes, and one of our concerns with heavier trucks, of course, is always bridges. While we can spread the weight out over many tires to reduce per axle weight on the road, when it comes to a bridge, the whole truck can be on the bridge at one time. Are the bridges along this route in good repair and in adequate shape to handle these heavier loads?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Torkelson, I've talked to Dwayne Hill, the highway district engineer from INDOT, and all the bridges on this stretch have been replaced, so they can handle the 10-ton capability.
Representative Torkelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other issue with longer trucks, of course, is safety of our other users of the road who are not used to encountering these lengthy vehicles. Have you spoken with Highway Patrol or anyone else about running these longer trucks over longer routes?
Representative Ecklund.
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, no, I haven't. I was assuming since it was working fine on shipping product out of the Blandon Mill in Grand Rapids that the DOT would have, or Highway Patrol would have had something to say about it if they didn't like this bill.
They're here, but I don't see them advancing to the testifying table. So is there further discussion, Representative Runbeck?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Ecklund, so Truck Highway 53, could you just refresh us, is this International Falls then, all the way to the Port of Duluth?
Representative Ecklund.
Mr. Chair, Representative Runbeck, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and Mr. Chair.
Representative
is- This is strictly logging, or are there other products being hauled as well?
Mr. Chair,
Representative Ecklund.
Representative Runbeck, this is for hauling finished product. The logging trucks would be what we have right now. They come in either 100-inch or tree length. And I believe that this expansion that we're looking at, they'll be mostly taking 100-inch, so it'll be on the smaller trucks.
Thank you.
Members, is there any further discussion to House File 253? Representative Ecklund, did you have any concluding comments for the committee?
I just thank you for your time, Mr. Chair and members, and I think this bill will help the forest products industry in northern Minnesota.
Okay, the motion is before us to have House File 253 referred to the General Register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. Thank you. You're on your way to the floor. And while you're here, should we take House File 1649 as well?
That would work for me, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And this is the one that has the amendment. So allow the members a little time to go through their folders, and then we can discuss the amendment. I assume this is just one of these amendments to get the bill into the shape you'd like it considered?
That is correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Well, why don't we do that first then? And you wanted to explain it's the A1 amendment, members. The A1 amendment.
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you. The A1 amendment on line 1.2 and 1.3, it'll just, after the period, well, you guys can read the amendment, but a third-party testing program may be reimbursed by the tested driver's school district or company. So what this is just going to help with what we're trying to do with this bill for small companies or school districts or such that cannot afford to have their own testing program, but they know that they'll have to pay to have their drivers tested at a third-party spot.
I don't remember if I moved House File 1649 to the General Register, but that's the motion. Is there discussion to the A1 amendment? Okay, to the A1, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. We have House File 1641 as amended before us. It is the version that the author would like us to consider the bill in. You can proceed, Representative Ecklund. I see you've got a couple folks here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. House File 1649 allows for a private bus company that employs a third-party tester to enter into an agreement with another private bus company that does not employ third-party testers to administer the state-required licensure driving test to the company's driving candidates. Key points of the bill and the issues addressed: under Department of Public Safety rules, a person applying for a school bus driver endorsement can have the final driving exam administered at a state testing site or by a third-party tester certified and regulated by the Department of Public Safety and employed by a school district or a private company. A third-party tester employed by a school district can test applicant drivers within the school district and within other school districts. A third-party tester employed by a private company can only test a candidate drivers applying to work at that specific company. The third-party tests are required to test at least 12 candidates a year in order to maintain their tester status. Many small private companies do not have enough demand to maintain an on-staff third-party tester. Currently, the wait time to take a driving test at a state facility is up to 3 months. The process from when a driver applies at a bus company to drive and when they can be on the road as a licensed driver can take as little as 14 days. Because of the delay in getting the drivers before a state examiner, many driver applicants walk away after waiting 4 weeks, 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks to get an exam. In our district, bus drivers in International Falls and Grand Marais need to drive to Grand Rapids, Virginia, or Duluth to take the exam. Many times they need to come to the Metro just to find an exam opening. We currently have a driver shortage in every school district, with some needing more than 100 additional drivers. We can't afford to let potential drivers walk away simply because they can't get scheduled for a state exam. Expanding the third-party examiner program will allow drivers access to the testing they need to become licensed school bus drivers. And because the third-party tester program is overseen by the Department of Public Safety, it is held to the same standards as the state testing facilities. I have two testifiers, Mr. Chairman, and I can turn that over to them at this time if that's possible.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in House File 1649. My name is Scott McMahon, and I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota School Bus Operators Association. We represent the 130 private bus companies that contract with school districts across Minnesota to safely transport students to and from school, sporting events, and school activities. We employ over 5,000 bus drivers. Minnesota faces a serious bus driver shortage. Every school district in the state faces the challenge, with some experiencing more than 100 drivers missing. While we know there are multiple causes of the shortfall, one cause that we experience all too often in our industry is the delay in the process it takes the school bus driver candidate to get his or her bus license. I don't want to repeat a lot of the things that Representative Ecklund mentioned in his intro, so I will skip over a few things here. But we have a process laid out where a driver can get from the time they come into a bus company to being on the bus should take 14 to 30 days. We are all too frequently running into situations where it's taking us 30, 60, 90, 120 days to get them on the road. During that time, you can imagine they find other jobs and they walk away. The process isn't helping us fill the tremendous shortage that we do have in the industry. There is an alternative to this process, this third-party tester process. The third-party tester is employed either by the school district or by the private company, and they are allowed to test the candidates and their behind-the-wheel test, which is the final process. I should state that the process the driver goes through includes. Let me see if I can find it here. They need to pass within that 14-day time period. They pass a physical, a drug test, a background test, a knowledge test. They need to hold a commercial learner's permit for 14 days, complete behind-the-wheel training, and then the final step is the state-issued test. What we're asking is to expand what's allowed for the third-party testing so that we can get this last step of the process done for the drivers and get them on the road more quickly. The bill allows for the private bus companies to enter into agreements, which must be approved by the Department of Public Safety, to allow the company with a third-party tester to test driver candidates from a company that does not employ a third-party tester. It also allows the company or school district providing the testing to be reimbursed by the company of the driver, not by the driver, but by the company who is hiring the driver for the expenses of administering that test. We know this won't solve the bus driver shortage, but we know that this will help tremendously in helping us get high quality and safe drivers on the road, helping our schools, our families, and our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Are there questions for Mr. McMahon? Appreciate your coming down and your testimony. Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow members. My name is Paul Meyer. I am a general manager of Hutchinson Bus Lines in Hutchinson, Minnesota. I'm just here to state recently we had a driver come in, we'll call him Steve. He came in December 17th. We had all his applications, everything filled out, all the paperwork done. He went and took his 4 written exams to become a school bus driver. Within a week's time, he was ready to go. We had his criminal background check. While we were waiting for that took approximately 14 days. And we were going through his training at that time, just the pre-trip training that's required of a school bus driver. And once we got the criminal background check back, we got him behind the wheel, started him training. It was obvious he was going to be ready in very short order. We finally got a date scheduled that was 3.5 weeks out. So in the meantime, I kept him driving on vans, riding along with other school bus drivers to get the feel of how to handle the kids and how to handle the bus in different situations. There was about a week lapse where I did not hear from him at all. I called him on a Friday, and he said, well, this last week, he said I couldn't wait any longer. He went and applied at 3M, which is a big company in Hutchinson, applied probably 25% of the town, that he applied over there, had an interview and got hired in 4 days' time. So I lost a potential bus driver in that short period while he was waiting to become a driver. I just wanted to emphasize that with a third-party tester, we probably could have called another company and got in with somebody else. It would have eliminated that situation for me. Now we have to start all over. We lost about $450 getting him trained in that we paid for and that were our expenses at that time, and now we're out that. And granted, that's part of doing business, but I think the third-party tester would help eliminate that situation.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Are there questions for Mr. Meyer? Okay. Appreciate both of you coming down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there discussion to the bill? All right. President Ecklund, closing comments. You have a couple of powerful committee members as co-authors, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think this should go a long ways to help us resolve some of our school bus driver shortage that we have in the state, so I appreciate the time and the consideration.
Okay. So, members, the bill is now before us, and I will renew my motion that House File 1649 as amended be referred to the General Register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion prevails. Thank you, Representative
Thank you, Mr.
Ecklund. You're on your way with a couple bills to the House floor. And we have Representative Schultz is here, so we will now consider House File 145. And yeah, I think you were our very first bill, and now you're going to be one of our last policy bills. So I will move House File 145 to be referred to the General Register, and I believe, do you have an amendment?
I do. I have A1 amendment.
The A1, I'll allow members again a little bit of time here to rifle through all your bills. I need the time as well.
Don't have it. Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
it was separate. Okay, thank you.
Okay, just give me a sec here.
I have it here.
Does everyone have the bill?
Yeah.
It wasn't in our packet.
Thank you.
Separately.
All right. Please proceed with the discussion. I do not believe I see an amendment, but
It was handed out.
handed out separately. Great. Okay, so let's maybe take your A1 first.
So,
Proceed.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we discuss the amendment separately, or can you
Well,
get
is
the
this
bill
an
in shape?
amendment, is this the amendment that you would like to?
I would like to adopt the amendment.
Yeah.
And then
let's
talk
do that
about the
first.
bill.
Yep. So please explain to us the A1 amendment.
So the A1 amendment just makes some clarifications and cleans up some language. And this was heard in the Senate earlier this session, and some law enforcement came forward and gave us some additional recommendations on the bill, and this is incorporating those recommendations.
Excellent. Is there discussion to the A1? I will move the A1. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. And now we have House File 145 as amended before us in the shape the author would like us to consider it in. Tell us about House File 145.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is a bill that very slightly broadens an existing exception to the prohibition on motor vehicle window tinting. So I have a constituent in my district, and a family member has a medical condition and needs the windows tinted. But if you have this currently in current statute, you have to have that person in the car with you to use that vehicle. And if you are only a one-car family, then it really limits the ability to use that vehicle unless the person with the medical condition is riding in the vehicle. So this just allows that the medical exception that a healthcare provider writes stays with the vehicle rather than the person. So any other family members can use that vehicle without the person being present.
Representative Driscoll, thank you for that. Representative Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Schultz, it sounds like it makes some pretty good sense that you'd have to work with that. My only question is, after the owner is done with the vehicle, does it have to be retrofitted, or does your change continue with a new owner who may not have a person or they themselves be with that aforesaid medical condition?
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Driscoll. That is a very good question. We don't change what is currently in current statute, so that would remain in current statute, and maybe a House research staff could inform us about what currently happens in statute.
Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair and members, I would anticipate that the vehicle would no longer be able to be operated on roads because the exception is specific to the circumstances of the medical statement. So either shipping it to another state that has a different threshold cutoff on light transmittance might be an option, or I'm not familiar with what kind of retrofit or removal of window glazing is available, but that might be a possibility as well.
Representative Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Schultz, I would ask you to look into that because someone may be selling that vehicle not even thinking about that, and the purchaser not even knowing about that. And I'd sure hate to see the purchaser put in a situation where they're not in compliance with law when they were involved in a good faith effort to try to purchase and sell that vehicle. So I think that particular area may need a little bit more of your attention before it heads to the desk to get a governor's signature.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the exception currently, we already have this exception in state law, so that would still be a problem with our current law, I believe, of whether or not they can remove the window glazing or notify a buyer if they sell it on the open market. So, but if we need to, maybe we do need to clean up that language, and so we could look at that in the future or bring an amendment to the floor if this comes as a single bill to the floor.
Representative Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I deputize you with that duty?
Of course you can. I have nothing else to do with this
If that's
session.
possible.
Yes, I would love to do that, and I will look to House Research to help me with that.
And thank you for raising that, Representative Driscoll. Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Schultz, for bringing this forward. Is the person who gets his prescription limited to utilizing it on only one vehicle?
Representative Schultz.
Only on in the way the bill is written, it would be tied to the vehicle. So it's tied with the vehicle instead of the person, which is what it currently is. So if the person is traveling in a different vehicle, currently they would have to have their medical waiver with them in that vehicle.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So could they get a second prescription for a second vehicle?
Representative Schultz.
If the person was probably, if the person needed to switch between two vehicles, then I think that, and they have a medical condition, I would want them to be allowed to do that. But the situation I'm trying to address is if the person has one vehicle and others in the family can no longer drive that vehicle without the person being present.
Representative Torkelson, and I think Mr. Burris also wanted to weigh in a little bit as well, but did you want to? Okay. He knows.
Mr. Burris has the floor,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, that's great. Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair and members, just so you're aware, the A1 amendment does allow for up to 2 vehicles to be specified in the prescription. That is language on 1.11 and 1.12 of the A1 amendment.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good thing Mr. Burris reads more carefully than any of us, I think. So just one more question,
Sure, of
Mr.
course.
Chair. Representative Schultz,
Proceed.
any idea how common this is? It's not something I've run across in my experience. I'm guessing it's fairly uncommon, but have you got any statistics as to how often the current law has been utilized by citizens in Minnesota?
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have a specific statistic, given that I have one constituent in a district of about 40,000. So you can glean some information from that. But given that skin cancer rates are increasing, there might be a higher demand in the future for something like this.
Okay. Great. Yes, Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also was wondering too if there was any consideration for PCAs. I know my niece actually has a prescription for this, and so being that she's not the one driving, my brother-in-law, sister, and both my sister-in-law, who is her aunt, is also her PCA, and so was wondering if there was any thought to maybe adding PCAs into that as well.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Kegel. I think that's a great idea. This was limited to family members, and this was part of the amendment that was brought forth by law enforcement because they were worried it would be too broad. So we can maybe amend that if the next stop or on the floor. I think that's a good suggestion.
And then I was, oh, sorry.
Sure, Representative Cagle.
And I was also wondering about the selling the car as well, because I know when my brother-in-law sold his car with the tinted windows, they left the tinted windows in place and actually sold it to his sister-in-law, so who is the PCA. So hopefully we can get some of that worked out as well.
Yes, we will work on that. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representatives Cagle and Schultz. And just as a reminder, the next stop is the floor, so
Okay.
you'll have an opportunity, to amend it there. Any other discussion? Any last thoughts you want to share with us?
Thank you, committee members, for serving on the Transportation Committee and hearing this bill. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, then I will renew my motion that House File 145 as amended be referred to the General Register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. Thank you. We are going to take House File 1777 now. That is Representative Elkins' bill on urban residential speed limits. This is going to be an interesting one. So you have an amendment, but before we do that, let's see here.
Yeah, there's a handout in here as well. The amendment is a delete all, which I'll explain.
Okay, so members, before we do the amendment, I'm going to move that House File 1777 be referred to the General Register. But you have a DE1, correct? Everybody in possession of the DE1?
There we go. So if I see it there, I can see it. Great. Okay, should I explain the amendment?
Yeah, this is an amendment to get the bill in the shape you'd like it considered.
Yes, it is, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
so why don't, I'll move the DE1 amendment then, members? Proceed.
Proceed, yes. So, members, the original wording of the bill came to me from the Senate, so it was, of course, vague and had included undefined terms.
He says, of course. I love that. I love that.
I'm learning. So, working with Pat Dalton and after discussions with personnel from MnDOT and the counties, realized that there's actually a much easier way to skin this particular cat. In the original. Yeah. In the original language, there was, for example, a reference to residential areas, which is a term that is not defined in the statute, but is very similar to terms that are defined in the statute, which I thought would be very confusing. And upon further reflection and having worked on this issue for about 20 years, I remembered that there's already a provision in the statute related to speed limits that enables a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit in residential road roadways if adopted by the road authority having jurisdiction over the residential roadway, and the speed limit adopted under that paragraph is not effective unless the road authority has erected signs designating the speed limit and indicating the beginning and end of the rural residential district for the roadway in which the speed limit applies. So the problem with that provision over time has lied in the definition of a residential roadway, which you'll see at the bottom of the handout. Current law, it is defined as a residential roadway means a city street or town road that is less than 1/2 mile in total length. And as a practical matter, that is effectively limited to cul-de-sacs. So instead of messing elsewhere, the proposed change would just change the definition of a residential roadway, leave everything else the same, and to the definition of a residential roadway, we would add, or in an area zoned exclusively for housing, which is not a collector or arterial street, to make it clear that it would be truly local streets and not the collector or arterial streets that might also pass through a neighborhood. So with this, it makes it a very minimal change to existing state law, but it makes this a provision that cities could actually use. And to illustrate this, a couple of pictures. So the one that you have before you now is a typical suburban 36-foot street of the style that was generally built in suburban communities for the last half of the 20th century.
Representative Elkins, do you have any kind of feature that would enlarge?
I may need Mr. Howe for that, so. Oh, I see what.
Maybe we need to get a keepers.
I thought he fixed it for me. Is that better?
Frank, maybe we went back to keepers down.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
All right.
Yeah. That street would have looked a lot narrower than it actually is.
I mean, you illustrated a point. But,
Yeah.
No,
So this is a typical 36-foot wide residential street of the sort that was typically built in second and third ring suburban communities from about the 60s to the early 2000s. And on this type of a street, which was predominant prominently built during that time, a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, which is the current default, is perfectly appropriate. Okay. But the history of how these streets came to be 36 feet wide is interesting because it took me over 10 years to find the answer to that because no traffic engineer could tell me. I finally found the answer in a book on the history of American street design. Yes, I am that nerdy. And it came to us not from any highway authority. It was a standard that was promulgated by the Federal Housing Administration back in the 40s at a time when the suburbs were first starting to grow. And the FHA decided that they were not going to back loans in suburban communities unless those communities had paved streets. And in the absence of any existing standards for how suburban streets ought to be built, they took the only standards they have, which were the standards for state trunk highways of the day, which specified that travel lanes should be 10-foot wide and parking lanes should be 8-foot wide. So two 10-foot travel lanes and 2 8-foot parking lanes equals 36 feet. And that is the only reason why these streets, the typical suburban street was built out to 36 feet wide. But there are many, okay, now there's not an easy way here to actually just forward the pictures, are there? Oh, you're going to, I need to switch pictures here. Let's do, probably this one. That's a good example. This is a 26-foot wide street in St. Paul. Clearly, 30 miles per hour would not be an appropriate speed limit on this one. I've got a couple of even better ones here. This is a very interesting street. This is Lombard Street in St. Paul, just east of Lexington Avenue. It's 22 feet wide, and clearly a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit would not be appropriate on this street. This is a street called, let's see, which one is this one? Timberglade Road in Bloomington. It's about 20 feet wide, and clearly a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit would not be appropriate on a street like this. So the point is that cities should have some discretion to designate and post streets where a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit is more appropriate than a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, which is otherwise the default. The fact that these streets would have to be posted as being 25 miles per hour would pose a constraint on cities doing this willy-nilly, not doing it just where it's necessary. But I think this is an authority that is long overdue for cities to have. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, and thank you, Representative Elkins. Do you have testifiers? I wasn't clear. There were some.
I don't have any that I've organized myself. There may be people in the audience who wish to testify.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify either in favor or opposed to this bill? Then we can have some committee discussion. Okay. Let's discuss the DE one then, and then we can consider the entire bill.
Yeah, so
what is
again,
your
the DE1 just simplifies the language. I think it's just a lot more straightforward than the original language in the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have an A1.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't.
I'm on the wrong amendment, sorry. A1, excuse me.
Oh, DE1.
DE1?
DE1.
Oh, I'm-
It's a DE1, yeah.
DE1, sorry. Yeah, there's a couple of Elkins bills, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I was
This is-
right the first.
This is
I always
1777.
assume I'm, not, yeah.
I'm the speed limit guy
I always
today.
feel like Representative Runbeck's bringing something up, it's, no.
So we're
Okay.
1777.
Okay, so, members, just to clarify, the 1777 DE1 is what's before us. Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before this gets passed, I just want to make sure that this bill allows for, when you say zone exclusively for housing, could it also have, I have areas in my district that might have a school on that road? It wouldn't exclude if there's a school there, because that's obviously where we want it to be lower. I
Yeah,
just
in
wanted to
most-
make sure that it
Most
includes
cities,
it.
schools are within residential zoning districts.
So that would count. It wouldn't exclude if there was.
Well, and schools have, that you can go down to 20 miles per hour when children are present as well. So there's an existing exception for schools.
Right, but it's under different parameters for school safe zones, I believe. But anyway, I just want to make sure that it includes residential areas with schools. Could I ask our staff that, if it does?
Mr. Burris?
Do you know?
Mr. Chair, Representative, I'm going to have to dig into it a little bit.
Okay.
I don't have a response for you right away.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, if we can't get it right away, I would just like to make sure that the bill, when it moves on, that we just make sure that that's covered. And go
If
ahead.
it's necessary, then this would be a simple floor
Yeah,
amendment.
right, exactly. And Mr. Chair, can I say one more thing?
Of course.
I just really want to thank Representative Elkins for doing this, because if we can get speed limits to people to go lower, it would really increase the safety for people who use that roadway, whether they walk on it, bike on it, live on it. And I really appreciate that. And, the real strategy is to get people to go those speeds.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
thank you.
The irony of the 36-foot street is that the rationale also turned into, as long as we're making them this wide, we don't need sidewalks, because the roads and the people and the cars can share the road. And then we discovered that people drove too fast on those 36-foot wide streets, and so nobody wanted to walk on them.
Okay, is there further discussion of House File 1777 as amended? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've got 1778 coming up, and that talks about cities of the first class, and 1777, we talked about cities and towns. The question I have is, would these be statutory cities that you're talking about in this section, Representative Elkins?
Representative Elkins.
It doesn't specify either statutory or charter.
Okay, that was my second question, Mr. Chair, on that. An additional question, Mr. Chair?
Proceed.
Thank you. I know that again, 1778, and I can also see in 1777 the same issue. In the city of St. Paul or Minneapolis and some of the established neighborhoods back in the days that we were creating those neighborhoods, there were smaller businesses that were in those neighborhoods, so they wouldn't necessarily be exclusively residential. As we started to go to a more suburban, some of that may have moved from the core cities into the suburban areas. How are you addressing those kinds of situations where there might have been a converted corner grocery store that's now still a corner grocery store or providing some other kind of service or product that's in that neighborhood, because that wouldn't necessarily meet exclusively, because the city may have granted an exception on that, and I don't want to have cities get into parsing zoning exceptions and those kinds of things when they're trying to figure out whether or not this will apply.
Sure, this is a very good question.
Representative Elkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the cities, those corner stores are invariably on streets that would be designated as collectors or arterials. And so you would not have the 25-mile-per-hour speeds on arterial streets.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Driscoll.
what about the cross streets that might be shorter that come across those arterials?
Representative Elkins.
Well, you'd post the speed limit for just beyond where the residential neighborhood starts and the commercial area ends. You would have to post.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Driscoll.
Again, what I'm thinking about is in these neighborhoods where there's maybe just simply and how I've seen them, is oftentimes wood frame construction, lap siding, where there was a living residence upstairs and then there's a business entity downstairs where the proprietor lived on premises. That may still be zoned or granted under a zoning exception to a conditional use permit. So I'm just wondering.
Would probably be a conditional use within a
Representative
residential zone, Mr. Chair, sorry.
But to that point, Mr. Chair, Representative Elkins, I just want to make sure that a city doesn't have to come back and say, we seek further clarification on this. I've got extensive local government experience, and so I'm just trying to save all of us extra time in the future by asking those questions today.
Now, Mr. Chair, I am also lots of local government experience, so I appreciate every single question you're asking.
You and I are nerdy that way, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I believe if there's no other questions, there's another testifier that would like. Oh, Representative Petersburg and Representative Torkelson.
I'll let the chair go first.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Elkins. You've given us a nice history of street widths. I'd like a little more information about jurisdiction on speed limits. Perhaps the department would like to come down, or somebody else that knows a little, or perhaps you would like to enlighten us a little bit more on
No, this is
why.
addressed in the law already, Mr. Chair. So this bill addresses sections in the law where it clearly specifies the roads under the jurisdiction of the local government setting the speed limit. So I know that the counties, who I talked to yesterday, were very concerned about cities setting speed limits on county roads, and they didn't want that to happen. And so this bill only allows cities to set speed limits in residential areas under their jurisdiction.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what's prevented them from doing that up before this bill might be passed?
The definition, the existing definition, this was addressed on the handout. If you look at compare the definitions, the current one with the proposed one, the current definition of a residential roadway is so limiting that it is a practical matter. You can practically only use it on cul-de-sacs.
And,
Representative
Mr. Chair,
Torkelson.
so other streets would be considered similar to an arterial then, without this?
They're not considered residential roadways. They would be considered by default urban roadways where the default weight speed limit is 30.
Okay. Yes, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is just a food for thought because Representative Elkins' demonstration of his photos indicate that a speed limit is determined by width of the road. And that if you got 25 or 30, you certainly wouldn't want 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. But I would argue that we have 40% of our roads are township roads, and a lot of those are gravel. Most of those are gravel, if not all of them. And a lot of those are certainly less than that. Some of them are only 20 feet wide or so, and that's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. So it's not just the width. I mean, you have to take other factors into it as well. So you're implying well, it's this wide, so therefore you would want this distance. That's not the case, and it's just food for thought.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, no,
Welcome.
it's the concept of quote-unquote design speed takes into account road width and curvature and the elevation as well. So there are many factors that come into play, including, is parking allowed? There's a number of factors, and in the pictures I'm trying to show both road width and curvature and on-street parking and a number of things that would render a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit unsuitable.
Thank you. Mr. Culver available? I think you were interested in testifying.
Thank you, Chair
Welcome
Hornstein.
to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Mark Culver. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Roseville, also the past president for the City Engineers Association of Minnesota, and I'm representing the City Engineers Association this afternoon, which is a statewide association of municipal engineers and consultants that design, operate, and maintain city roads, utilities, facilities, and other municipal infrastructure. I'm actually going to be making some slight comments on both of Representative Elkins' bills, just to save time for the committee, because I know you have a very...
Yeah, we're probably not going to get to the second one until after session.
Yep.
We hope to finish this one before session.
Yep, so just, most of these comments are in relation to 1777, but it also pertains slightly to 1778. Just to state, first of all, that both of these bills do have some very quality merit in the fact that they're trying to react to a growing desire to change our driving culture in urban and residential areas and simply just slow down our driving and drive, as Representative Elkins say, drive for the conditions that are reasonable for the street. It's interesting that in 2008, the legislature actually did commission a task force to study the specifics of the speed limit statute, including whether the 30-mile-per-hour statutory speed limit should be modified to 25 miles per hour, whether the statutory speed limit of 55 miles per hour is appropriate in rural residential districts, and whether the then current definitions of urban district, rural residential district, and residential roadway are appropriate. And based on that study, there were some modifications made to the definitions, and the study concluded that a change to 25 miles per hour as a statutory speed limit was not warranted, mostly based on lack of support from public safety community, and the fact that a change to the speed limit, even with signs, would likely have little to no effect on the actual speed of the subject roadways. I understand that Representative Elkins' bill is much more specific to certain types of road and such. However, there is and since that study, there is certainly a growing culture change. More and more communities do support a change to a 25-mile-per-hour statutory speed limit that would actually be more broad than what this specific bill gets into. And the move towards complete streets and living streets is pushing a recognition that we should consider more than just the car in our design and operation of our roadways. But as we discuss these two specific bills, the engineering community at both the city and county levels are asking for an opportunity to stop and think about the issue of consistency and uniformity in the speed limit bill and how this is applied across all cities in the state of Minnesota. Speed limits that are effective work because they are consistent. A roadway in Grand Rapids that has a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit likely looks and acts very similar to a roadway in Eagan that has a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit. The signs help reinforce that speed limit, but the driver, through experience, has learned what speed limits likely are for certain roadway types. So as we focus that down into residential roadways and urban district roadways, we would like to preserve that consistency. The borders between St. Paul and Roseville, between Minneapolis and Edina, are not always crystal clear. And even with the posting of the signs, there's an expectation from the driver that there's more consistency in local roadways between those communities. As I said, the City Engineer Association is advocating for one more chance at assembling a group of practitioners and stakeholders, taking the intent of these bills and recommending language that helps clean up the current statutes on speed limits, as well as reinforces or establishes a statutory speed limit on residential and/or urban district roadways that can be communicated and enforced evenly and uniformly across the state. This could be done between now and the start of next year's session with a recommendation delivered to the legislature. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Culver. Are there questions for Mr. Culver? Appreciate it. Thank you. I also understand, is Ms. Murray here and interested in testifying? Welcome to the committee, Ms. Murray. Please state your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, members, my name is Emily Murray with the Association of Minnesota Counties, and I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota County Engineers Association. My comments are also sort of on both bills, but I'll keep them focused to 1777 as well. I want to start by sharing that both AMC and the county engineers have had a long-standing platform position supporting the exclusive role of the Commissioner of Transportation in establishing speed zones on all roadways. This speed study process is one that has served county and city engineers very well for many years, and it has ensured statewide consistency of the evaluation process. County engineers value uniformity and consistency of roadway design and operation, such that drivers do not encounter different expectations of driving behavior as they travel throughout the state. Therefore, it is important that speed limits are implemented in a consistent manner across the state and with proper study in order to protect the safety and the expectations of the traveling public. I'd like to echo what Mr. Culver outlined in his testimony in support of putting together a group of stakeholders to study the language in this bill and in 1778, and to just generally study the speed limit statute. As he mentioned, much has changed since the last stakeholder group was put together back in 2008, and county engineers would be happy to participate and bring recommendations back to the legislature. I would like to thank Representative Elkins for significantly narrowing the scope of both bills through the amendments offered today. There was some ambiguity in House File 1777 prior to the amendment that might have allowed for a city to change the speed limit on a county road as it runs through a residential area, but this has been cleared up. So we appreciate his work on these amendments, but we do just want to register our general support for the current method of changing speed limits across the state. Thank you for your time.
Representative Hausman, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I guess to both of the testifiers, my understanding from Representative Elkins was that, well, not necessarily a question, but just observation. Representative Elkins already told us about a past history where, in fact, stakeholders sat down and did just this very thing and came from recommendations. But that still has not solved the very specific problem that he's solving with this bill, which is really narrow. A very unique situation. And so I thought his amendment, which I think clarifies that even more, is helpful. So his bill seems to run counter to the arguments you're making. We have studied, stakeholders have come with recommendations, but this particular niche wasn't dealt with in those recommendations because we enacted some of those recommendations.
Representative Hausman, yes, thank you. And I would agree with that and to Ms. Murray's point, as far as refinement of the bill just very recently to help really focus in specifically. I guess my concern and my colleagues' concern is still an opportunity for that continuity, that uniformity to be lost, and some confusion for the driving public as to, is this a 25 or is this a 30? I think what we would really like to get to is, do we really, really want to support a 25 mile per hour speed limit on our residential roadways? And even to that point, there are complications to just saying, roadways with only housing on it, particularly as we redevelop areas in Roseville. We're redeveloping areas and we're really promoting mixed use, so that we do have a mix of commercial and residential, even in perhaps maybe not on a traditional collector street and things like that. And I think you're going to see more and more of that even within St. Paul, Minneapolis. So there will always be some things that are kind of slipping through the cracks. And I think if we can, again, with this new culture and with this new drive, no pun intended, towards slower speeds and maybe a more support holistically about the 25 mile per hour speed limit, I think maybe we can come together with some broader language that provides more uniformity in the law versus passing this and then saying, oh, well, we missed this, this, and this, and then coming back a year or 2 years later to try to address those things.
Representative Hausman, do you have a follow-up for
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Culver?
Chair, and I just would observe, just remembering Representative Bernardi's earlier comments, because we're so keenly aware of pedestrian safety, and I think that I recall those pedestrian deaths are going up. I seem to recall some statistic to that. That moving quickly on this one very specific problem to residential areas where kids are running around, there's an urgency, it seems to me, about it. Anytime you have a study and stakeholders, we're talking about sometime off in the future, And so I think that would just be the observation I would make about this bill.
Mr. Culver?
And if I may, again, I agree. I think we would be looking at a very short time frame in order to respond, still within, with these same legislators, still this same momentum next year, next session. But again, try to be more holistic about it. I think anything that we do, even with signs, even with this bill, is going to require, to be effective, is going to require a very concentrated effort on both enforcement and education. And I believe if it's much more holistic and we can get buy-in from the engineering community as well as the municipalities as a whole, then I think we can drive that education and enforcement much better and have much more effectiveness on the desire to reduce those speeds in the residential areas.
Representative Houseman? Okay. Representative Elkins, and then is there anyone else that wants? Oh, Representative Runbeck.
I have a question for the testifiers.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's
Would both of you agree with me that a
unorthodox.
30-mile-per-hour speed limit is not appropriate on this street?
members. I haven't quite seen this interaction before, but I suppose it's.
If I may.
Yes.
I would agree that on this segment of this roadway, 30 miles per hour is not appropriate. However, just past those curves, what does the roadway look like?
It looks like this is a big
Right.
long loop.
But that is, yes, I would agree that for this, a 30 mile per hour speed through here is not appropriate.
Okay, Representative Runbeck and Representative Tapke, and I do want to make sure before we recess, is there anyone else that wishes to testify? Okay, why don't we have the testifier, and then we'll have Representative Runbeck and Tapke, and then recess at this point. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. Chair and representatives, my name is Peter Buchan. I'm the Assistant State Traffic Engineer for the Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Welcome to the committee, Mr. Buchan.
Thank you. Through delegated authority from the Commissioner of Transportation, I'm responsible for reviewing and authorizing speed limits in the state of Minnesota when requested by local road authorities. Currently, 169.14 establishes 8 statutory speed limits. When those statutory limits are utilized, MnDOT does not get involved. We only look at road speed limits on roadways when requested by the local road authority to do so. The current statute with the 30 mile per hour urban district does, as Mr. Culver explained, it sets an expectation for drivers, and it's well understood across the state. So there is no signing on most residential streets because the expectation is when I'm in that neighborhood, my speed limit should be 30 miles per hour. And that consistency sets expectations for the drivers and for law enforcement. And as they go from location to location or city to city, that expectation is met. As I read this, and I'm sorry, there is 2 bills that are very similar but different, but slightly different in that 1778 allows the establishment of speed limits either above or below the statutory limits, which today the system that's in place where the Transportation Department reviews speed limits does seem to be working and accomplishes what's being done here. So. We think that the current system is working. I concur with Mr. Culver's recommendation that a study group would be helpful so that we can get the representatives from the cities and get their perspective as we look at this. I also agree that the modes and the attitudes and the realizations, both with respect to pedestrian safety and other modes of travel, have changed, and that would be a good review of the statute.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Any questions for Mr. Buchan? Okay.
Mr. Chair, actually, I do.
Okay, Representative Elkins, proceed.
Residential roadways is one of the existing Class 8 classifications, is it not?
Mr. Buchan.
Chair and Representative, yes, it is.
Okay. And how does the existing case violate your principles?
Chair and Representative, the existing case, I agree that this is an improvement to the language, and I appreciate that clarification because, as you stated, it was a very limited application, and that broadening that, I think, is a good change.
Thank you. Okay, why don't we do this? We have, is there anyone else before in the audience that would like to testify for or against? I have 3 people on the list, and then we'll recess after their comments or questions. Representative Runbeck, Representative Tabke, and Representative Bernardi. So Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For what it's worth, I remember trying to change the speed limit law myself once. Ran into the same buzzsaw, but no, I think it's very. I think I heard from the testifiers that they were going to go ahead voluntarily and put together a work study group on their own. I don't know if they need language to do that, but it sounds like they're ready to go. And it just seems like that maybe a few more months of looking at it and getting a comprehensive approach would be very beneficial. That's my comment.
All right, thank you. Representative Tabke.
Ready?
Vice Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Elkins, thank you very much for bringing this forward. I just want to make 2 points with regard to this. I think that while I was mayor, this is one of the major things that was constantly coming up was speed limits, and the city could do nothing about them. It drove us absolutely crazy because there are places where it had to be, it absolutely should be reduced, but cities didn't have the ability to do that. So I firmly believe that you are on the right track, and cities will make the right choices and do what is necessary to make sure that their streets are safe for their communities and make that local control piece make the right decisions for themselves. Secondly, what this will also hopefully do is push cities and counties and townships more into understanding the direct relationship between engineering and design and speed, and the fact that the reason why we have speeding is because the roads weren't engineered correctly for the speed that they want in the neighborhood. And so I think as we learn more and really understand how that continues to move forward, that cities are retrofitting streets and really heading in the right direction. So a 30-mile-an-hour street feels like a 30-mile-an-hour street, and a 20-mile-an-hour street feels like a 20-mile-an-hour street. And we've got a long way to go with the counties in doing that, but cities are understanding it. So thank you very much for pulling this in.
Thank you. So last comment before we vote is Representative Bernardi.
Okay, I just wanted to, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I like that sound.
Don't get me in trouble.
Yeah, right, exactly. I wanted to find out, I'm hearing about this task force being mentioned. Is that something that can happen without legislation? And is legislation required? And I would imagine the task force would be broader than strictly engineers. That's my question.
Is that a question to the author or to MnDOT?
Probably, Mr. Chair, probably MnDOT.
Okay. Mr. Buchan?
Hello, Chair and Representative. I think it could clearly include more than just engineers, and it should include units of local government as well as law enforcement. The last study that was referred to included engineering representatives from the cities and counties and law enforcement from both state patrol and local units of government. So this could do the same.
Representative Bernardi, one final.
Okay, yeah, so Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask, would legislation be required to do this? And I definitely would want to weigh in on the stakeholders who that would be on that committee.
Mr. Buchan?
Chair and Representative, I don't know that legislation would be required. We can convene a committee without legislation. Then my question would be, how do we submit that to the legislature?
Well, this is a very hypothetical situation, but I think, there's often communication to the appropriate committee chairs and ranking members. Sometimes there is a communication with the speaker and the minority leader. So I think that your commissioners would probably be the one to make these inquiries, but there are channels, and this does happen routinely, but it seems like we're discussing a hypothetical at this point. Representative Tabke.
Mr. Chair, is there any reason why this cannot move forward and a task force be implemented as well? I think they can move concurrently and be fine.
This does not appear to be mutually exclusive. Representative Elkins, you can comment on this. Would you prefer that we lay this over until after the recess or vote on this? Now, I think we are ready to vote, but if people want to continue
We're ready
talking
to
about
make
it, we
some
can.
closing comments.
Absolutely.
We bring this one home. I want to point out, I have served on numerous such committees myself, including several years on MnDOT's Complete Streets Task Force. Were you on that with me?
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. So these kinds of things, that particular task force resulted in significant changes to MnDOT's design standards, but not speed limit standards. As the representative from MnDOT points out, agrees with me, I'm not creating any new categories of speed limits here. I'm only changing the definition for what one of the categories means in a way that would give cities the flexibility to, in limited cases, be able to experiment with these kinds of things. The picture I have before you is from Edina, or they have taken to using a different loophole in the law that says you can set 25-mile-per-hour speed limits on parkways. So they reconstruct their streets on a complete streets manner, call them parkways, and set the speed limit at 25. So there's a lot of good data points occurring out there right now that could be used in a study. So I would say we should move forward with this bill and constitute the study and use the changes that result from this bill to in the study.
Thank you very much, Representative Elkins. So 2 things we need to do here. First is to vote on the DE1 amendment. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. Now, the bill is before us, House File 1777 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion prevails. Oh, okay. We we do have a split decision on this, but the motion does prevail. So members, just a quick announcement here before we recess. We will be coming back to this room 15 minutes after session, so we can wrap up relatively quickly. Oh, that was referred to the general register. I'm sorry. The motion was to refer that to the general register. We have 4 bills left. 1623, 1545, 1778, 1865, and 2434, 5 bills. And so make sure you put those in your folders. So with that, members, we are in recess till 15 minutes after session.